So we're talking about this idea of fandom. And when you're close to people who are part of your tribe or your family, you feel safe and comfortable, which is why at the Sphere, even though people I didn't know got into my personal space, were dancing near each other, because we're part of the same tribe. And as a meeting planner, thinking about how you bring people together into the same social space, the same personal space, becomes really important.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Keynote Curators podcast. I'm Seth Dechtman, your Keynote Curator. Our guest today is David Meerman Scott. David, welcome to the podcast.
Seth, it's so great to be here with the finest Keynote Curator that exists. So thank you so much for having me on.
You're very welcome. David, we have so much to cover. This could probably be a 10-part series. In the interactions we've had, there's a lot of really healthy, good, positive banter in the best sense of the
100%.
word, in the best sense of the word banter. But let's get right into the heart of the matter. You're returning recently, I think last night, from the Sphere in Las Vegas, all the talk of the town and even the world. You two kicked it off. You were there with Dead and Friends. Is that right? Tell us a little bit about that.
So I went to 3 shows in a row with Dead and Company. It was the second weekend that they were at the Sphere. And I mean, unbelievable in so many ways. And you and I are both Grateful Dead fans, so you get it. But going to Las Vegas, to this brand new $1.8 billion building that is essentially the first large building built for music. You know, there's lots of places that are big. This is 18,000 seats that do music, but they're built as hockey arenas or basketball arenas or another purpose. And oh my gosh, it was out of control cool. There's the entire roof ceiling is a screen. It's like an IMAX theater on steroids, like times 10. It's like it's ridiculous. And I've seen this. Those were the 108th, 109th, 110th Grateful Dead shows I've seen. And so I've seen them obviously many, many times. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, do I like it better? Do I like it, not like it as much? And I can't answer that, Seth, but I was thinking about this morning. I was still trying to process how amazing this thing was. Every seat, great sound. Every seat, great views. And the only way I can describe it is the difference between going to see a live show in a theater and going to an IMAX movie. They're utterly different, so you can't really compare them. But what I came away from that thinking, and I always do with anything related to the Grateful Dead, is the performance art of it. And they did such a fabulous job at using the technology in the Sphere, in the space, of understanding how to do the visuals, how the visuals interact with the music, how to relate to the audience, and how to play songs that the audience loves, but in new ways that work well with what was going on visually. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm watching this as a speaker, watching this as someone who's seen many speeches, and thinking, how cool is it to understand your technology deeply and then work with it to enhance the experience and not just do your off-the-shelf talk. There was no doubt in my mind as I was watching these 3 shows that this band rehearsed like crazy. And then they went into the Sphere, who knows how many times, to rehearse in the room itself. I heard you get dizzy. I mean, I knew you get dizzy when you watch as an audience member, but you get dizzy as a musician too. And they were in there and they were dialed in. They knew what to do, and it was unbelievable. Seth, next time you book something in Las Vegas, go with your speaker and go to the Sphere if they're on it. It's amazing.
Yeah. I had some very dear friends of mine, lifelong friends from even before elementary school, that were there the first weekend, and they, echoed your sentiments. I've heard, what you point to, and what I've heard the feedback is it's overwhelming. And, we have a tendency, do I like it? Do I not like it? But it's kind of incomparable, right? Like there's nothing to reference it to. So at the most basic level, it's different, but it's different on steroids, right?
Right. I think that's the way I may need another month to totally process it. I was there we're doing this recording on a Tuesday. I was there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it hasn't been very long since I've been
Yeah, it's
there,
still very
but
fresh.
it's I can't compare a Grateful Dead concert from say the 1980s to a Dead and Company show from say 5 years ago to the experience at the Sphere. All amazing, but all different. But in all cases, working with the technology and the space and the audience members of the time. So the performance in each of those cases, the Grateful Dead 40 years ago, Dead and Company 5 years ago when they were playing normal stages, Dead and Company in the Sphere, understood what they had to work with, and they elevated their performance in an equivalent manner. And when I do my keynotes, I love that aspect of it. I'm
Yeah,
on the phone with the meeting planner. I want to know, tell me about the technology. What is the lighting like? What's the stage like? How big is the stage above the floor level where people are? Are the people lit or are the people in darkness? Is it round tables? Is it seats? What's going on with the audience? And I love that aspect. And I want to arrive the night before, check out the stage. I don't want to just do a simple sound check, but I want to speak with the people in the production table. I want to understand what I have to work with. I want to understand the best way to use videos, or maybe not. And
right.
there's no doubt that that Dead and Company did that with the Sphere, and it made it just that much better because they knew what they were working with.
You point to something important, and I'm going to make an observation, editorial, and maybe frame a question, and then you can help me land the plane, if you will.
Sure.
New rules of marketing and PR. It's been translated into 29 languages. And what edition is it on? The eighth edition?
It's currently in the eighth. I finished the manuscript for the ninth edition, which will release in August of 2024.
If you haven't bought the book, for our audience out there, go and get it. For meeting professionals, business owners, anybody trying to understand, marketing, it's a Bible. My daughter has a copy. She's in
Oh,
her
thank
third
you.
year at university and she has a copy. And this would be a good time to ask our audience to subscribe, to like, to comment, share it with anybody and everybody in your world, in your sphere, if you will.
Nice. Bring it back to the Sphere. I love it.
Bring it back to the sphere. All roads lead to the sphere. Couple observations and then a question, and you'll help me co-pilot and land this plane. You
Sure.
know, experience is a hot term in meeting planning, event planning. And I often hear it, and I'm not a cynic, but I'm a realist. And experience for experience sake is kind of empty and there's no
Mm.
durability. Experience can also lean heavily on technology, where then the message or the initiative gets lost, or that connective tissue of what the experience can be a vehicle for gets lost, and it becomes the protagonist. The sphere, it seems in your experience, has been able to leverage, utilize, kind of pull all that together. But at the core of it is the music
Yes.
and that experience. There's the word. What strikes you? You want to dance. A memory is triggered. There's a friend that's never been to a Dead show. You've been to almost 1,000, and I call it a Dead show, but you know what I mean. The whole
Yes.
experience, and so there's that excitement of now you making that link to another part of your world, another realm of your friendship or professional or whatever people you hang out with. The thing for meeting professionals is the stakes are higher today. We're coming back post COVID. Numbers are higher at events, and experience is a commodity. How do we balance that? How do you do that as a speaker, as the guru of marketing? How do you talk to the world and what to look out for? Help me land that plane.
So, what a great question. Thank you, Seth. As I was watching these three shows, altogether it was like 12 hours of music in the last weekend. As I'm watching these shows, it was fascinating to me because number one, we had a crew of 20 people, 20 of my friends. We've gone to Dead shows together for years, and we were like mind blown because of how different it was. But then we also grooved and danced, and we loved being way up front. So we arrived super early in general admission, which is in the pit, which is way down front. And we were about, I don't know, 25, 30 feet away from the band. So you could zone in on the band, but you could also look up and see these crazy
The
graphics. And
sound
then
must
one
have been amazing.
sound was every seat, great sound because there's literally thousands of speakers that are all helping out. And so then another time I was in the seats because I wanted to experience in a different spot. People around me had never been to a Dead show and their minds were blown. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, check this out. It's so crazy. What's going through my mind with the question is that the Grateful Dead started in 1965. And there's two of the original members that are still in the band Dead and Company. John Mayer is playing the Jerry Garcia role. He's been in music for 40 years. I was sort of calculating this. There's 200 years
Right.
plus
Well,
of
I
musical experience on stage. So talk
when was your first show?
my first show was January 17th, 1979. I was 17 years old. It was at New Haven Coliseum. So I've been on the bus for 45 years now. And so thinking about that professional aspect, when I go on a stage and people who I love who are speakers, when they go on a stage, they're figuring out, is this audience, I mean, I speak about marketing, is this a professional marketing audience? I'll change it up. Or is it business people who need to know something about marketing? I'll make it a different talk. Is it something where slides and videos and music would be great? Or is it something where maybe I just want to do a fireside chat kind of thing? And that only comes from experience. And what's interesting to me about the Sphere, the first three acts, U2, been around for 45 years. Fish, been around, I think, probably nearly 30 years. Dead and Company, as the Grateful Dead, has been around for 50 what for 58 years. So the Sphere brought in people with experience, and I think, Seth, what strikes me about you is you understand it's not just experience. Because you and I both know there's speakers out there who tell the same speech every single day and have done for the past 30 years. Nothing wrong with that. But how about those speakers that you and I also know, the great ones who have 10, 15, 20 years experience and move with the times. And in my case, I speak about marketing. You can't not bring
Right,
AI into that discussion. You
right.
have to. Artificial intelligence transforming marketing. But it's not all about artificial intelligence because marketing has existed for, I don't know, as a discipline 100 years, but marketing goes all the way back thousands of years when somebody wanted to sell their chickens at the farmer's market and they sold in a slightly different way than the other guys and they sold more. Ooh, that's marketing. So that experience is super, super important, but it's only really the experience plus the understanding of how to apply what's going on that's new and that's different, such that you've built something like Dead and Company did at the Sphere.
Very well said. And again, just to underscore it, the experience is valuable, but it can't be the end. It can't be
Right.
the only thing. It's the vehicle for which what you want to transmit and then have it
Exactly right.
last over time. I want to shift gears from new rules of marketing, and I want to move into Fandom, or
Yes.
which is a great book, Fanocracy. We've had Ken Schmidt on our show from Harley Davidson, and he talked about the importance of brand ambassadors and how
Mm.
it can transform traditional business models. I've talked to you, about your experience. I don't know if it was during the pandemic or at the end of the pandemic where you bought a vehicle and kind of toured around, and you might have had it beforehand, but you were a fan for, I don't know what brand it was, if it was Winnebago or another
Yeah.
one, where you tailored it to your custom life, surfing, bike riding, being out in the beautiful woods of New England or wherever it took you. And you were living your own core virtues. Um, Talk a little bit about Fandom today, tie it in with social media, influencers, these YouTube channels, and help me land the plane again.
So I love the idea of fandom. I have for a long time. The book I wrote is thank you for mentioning is called Fanocracy. And I was thinking, this is probably, I don't know, 10 years ago. I was thinking about fandom, the things I love. Some of them are around me right now. I've got a Grateful Dead logo over one shoulder. I've got a surfboard that I actually made over another shoulder. I've got a NASA model of the Saturn V rocket. I love the Apollo lunar program. I love to surf. There's fanocracy. Thank you. And so I was thinking about this idea of fandom and came up with this word fanocracy. And then my daughter and I got together to write this book. And we got together because I realized I'm a middle-aged white guy. I love the Grateful Dead. My daughter's a mixed race millennial who loves Harry Potter and loves Korean pop music, who happens to be an emergency room doctor. And so we had the same idea of fandom, but we came at it from completely different perspectives. So we thought it'd be cool to write this book together. And my daughter, Reiko, did a neuroscience degree at Columbia as her undergraduate prior to medical school. So we brought in this idea of neuroscience, the neuroscience of fandom. How and why do people become fans of something? And we looked at a number of different aspects of neuroscience and fandom. But one of the things that came up for us was the importance of how close you are to another person, proximity. And there's a neuroscientist named Edward T. Hall. We read his works, and he identified several different levels of proximity, starting with so-called public space, anything about 15 feet and further away. When someone's in our public space, we're aware they're there, but they don't really bother us subconsciously because they're far away. When they get inside of about 15 feet, they become in our social space. And we're now aware that they're there, and our guard is up. Is that danger? Is that someone we know? Is that a friend? Are they a part of our tribe or not? And then inside of 4 feet is called personal space, and it gets dialed up even further. So those people who are in our personal space, who we know and love, we feel great. But if you don't know them, like in a crowded elevator or a subway car or something, you feel danger. That's why you get a little nervous subconsciously when you walk into an elevator. If there's other people in there, you're in this closed space, in personal space with someone who you don't know. This goes back thousands of generations. It's a survival technique. We're talking about this idea of fandom. And when you're close to people who are part of your tribe or your family, you feel safe and comfortable, which is why at the Sphere, even though people I didn't know got into my personal space, were dancing near each other, because we're part of the same tribe. And as a meeting planner, thinking about how you bring people together into the same social space, the same personal space, becomes really important, because done well, some events that I've gone to that have done this really well, I'll give you an example. The HubSpot Inbound conference does this well. People go away thinking, wow, I became part of a tribe. I want to go back next year. And you might be in your hotel room, a couple blocks away from the venue. You see someone with the badge on, you have an instant bond, even if you've never met them, and you have a chit chat with them. Hey, how's the conference? What are the keynotes you've liked? That's building fandom from the perspective of being a meeting planner. But I'm going to go you one more, Seth, with this neuroscience.
Bring it on.
I want to talk to you briefly about another form of neuroscience we identified, which is called the mirror neurons phenomenon. So I mentioned this idea of how proximate you are to somebody. Social space is inside of 4 feet. And those who are in there, you're either nervous because you don't know them, or you're bonding because they're part of the tribe. Works with video too. And we're doing it right now. Let me explain what I mean. The idea of mirror neurons is that when you see somebody doing something, your brain can react as if you're doing it yourself, which I will demonstrate, Seth. I've got a lemon and a slice of lemon. If I take a bite of this slice of lemon, my brain will fire. My neurons will fire. I'm going to taste it and I'm going to feel it. But because of mirror neurons, yours will too. So let me take a bite. Wow, it's tart, it makes my eyes kind of water a little bit. My mouth puckers up. I mean, biting a lemon is a super strong experience. My brain is firing. Seth, is your brain firing too?
My spine and shoulders kind of straightened up a little bit,
a little bit of hair going up on the back of your neck.
Mitigate that sense a little bit.
So crazy, right? So that's mirror neurons. Now, where it's interesting from the perspective of a meeting planner is if you're doing a virtual event and you're doing it well, people in your audience will bond with that person on stage, virtual stage, like we're on this virtual conversation right now. For those of you who are watching, and if you're listening, you may even feel that mirror neuron, little bit of lemon in your throat as well. But while you're watching, you can see that we are in your social space right now. We're within it looks as if we're in 4 feet, Seth and I, if you're
Yeah.
watching on video. That is exactly why you feel that you personally know a movie star or a television star. You know you've never met, say, Tom Cruise, but if you saw him in the street, you'd think you were friends, even though you know you've never met him. And so that's the idea of mirror neurons. Super important for speakers to understand that concept, for meeting planners to understand that concept. And so the whole idea of proximity and virtual proximity as a very, very, very important aspect of how to do branding. And I'll take it one final step further to maybe land this plane. But as a professional speaker, I love this concept of understanding the power of proximity. That's why in nearly every speech, and I always clear it with the meeting planner first, but nearly every speech, I find at least one opportunity to go down the stage and into the audience. And I ask some questions. If I'm doing a speech about fandom, I ask questions about, hey, what are you a fan of? Who wants to share what they're a fan of? I get a handheld mic. What are you a fan of? And what I'm doing is I'm actually activating people's intelligence around this idea of proximity. So those people who I'm actually talking to, I'm in their personal space. I'm within 4 feet. I'm putting a microphone into their mouth. I'm thanking them. I'm shaking their hands. Oh, fan of the Boston Celtics. Oh, fan of fly fishing. Oh, fan of needlepoint. Whatever it might be. Fan of Harry Potter books. And so that then gets their mirror neurons firing. But then if it's up on the iMac, the big screens that I'm doing that, then everybody's mirror neurons are firing because they are seeing me talk to that person. They're seeing me talk to that other audience member, and they're experiencing that in exactly the same way because of mirror neurons. So, super interesting aspect of fandom that, I mean, I love this stuff. I
Yeah.
love figuring out what's going on and whether it's neuroscience or whatever, and then trying to incorporate something related to that in my own talks, and then understanding from the perspective of meeting planners how you can build certain things into an audience. And just as a final thought, that's one reason why panel discussions or fireside chats can work well, because you've got people together, they're talking to one another, and the audience's brains are firing because of mirror neurons.
I
Wow.
love
You asked me a really big question. I don't know if I touched on everything,
No,
but
it's perfect. It couldn't have asked for more. And this is why, our audience, which is, our tribe, likes and subscribes to us because they get the rich conversations and these rich insights. As a father of 3 daughters, I love the origin of this book and working with your daughter, your child. And what I know our audience captured, but I just kind of underscore, and if you have anything to add to it, is that here you have, as your words, a white male, Grateful
mid, a,
Dead
a
fan.
white, I now say middle-aged, a white
Yeah,
middle-aged male.
okay. Or as we've said on this podcast, middle-aged, pale, and male.
Yes, there we go.
And your daughter, who's mixed race marriage, she's in healthcare, she's a physician,
Yep.
highly accomplished in the medical world, super smart, as we say up in New England. On face value, maybe demographically very disparate, but the core values are completely harmonious. Interest
100%.
in this world of neurological intelligence and being able to connect and using the science and creating fandom and the why behind it all. To me, everything that you shared is rich, but that origin kind of foments it even more.
And Seth, you have daughters, so you would totally get it. The working with her on that book brought us together in so many interesting ways, and it was such a valuable experience. I know she would agree, for both of us to have worked for a couple of years to create this book. She was in medical school at the time,
Oh, she was just
And
getting her medical degree while
it's
writing a
getting a
book,
medical
just that.
degree and just happened to write a Wall Street Journal best-selling book while she was getting her medical degree, right?
Excuse me
And
while I'm on my way to take my boards and get certified as
yeah,
a
yeah, right. I have
physician.
to, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I have to talk to my
I think it's
publisher on the way.
I think it's hilarious. I remember the phone call. I called her up. I happened to be speaking at a Tony Robbins event, and it was like 6 in the morning. The Wall Street Journal came out. Holy cow! We made the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. So I called her. It was a West Coast speech, so she was up and said, "Please sit down." Oh, what happened, Daddy? You are a Wall Street Journal bestselling author. I said to her, and there was dead silence on the other end
Yeah.
of the phone. I said, "Hello." She goes, "What?"
She's like, "You're
What?
distracting me. I'm studying for
Oh my
molecular
God, that's
biology right
crazy.
now."
But here's something really I thought was fascinating about us coming together to write this book. When we first started writing Fanocracy, we were writing it in one voice, kind of a neutral, mixed voice
Mhm.
of she was a late, I think she's 20, she was 26 and I was in my 50s, white guy and mixed race woman and a Harry Potter lover and a Grateful Dead lover, kind of ram them together into one voice. And it wasn't working. We couldn't figure out why isn't this working? And finally it dawned on us that we were kind of sanding down all the rough bits
Yeah.
and
Yeah, you
making it too kind of
neutered.
yeah, neutered, great word, neutered. So what we ended up doing was rewrite. We didn't have to rewrite the whole thing, but rewriting the book essentially where she wrote her chapters, I wrote my chapters, she wrote in her voice, I wrote in my voice, and we actually have like it says like chapter 3 by David, chapter 4 by Reiko, and it worked way, 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 way better. And also because she's a better writer than me, it worked on that level too. But I found that to be really interesting. And I'm not trying to build in a lesson for meeting planners and everything I say, but what I found interesting there was my personality and her personality coming out made the book way better than if we had tried to make it neutral. But I've
Mhm.
seen many, especially corporate events, where the public relations department gets involved with the speeches and insists that certain language be, I'll use your word, neutered. You can't say that. You should say this. This is our talking point for that. This is our talking point for this. So you go to XYZ company's annual conference, and maybe there's one outside keynoter that Seth books for you, but then you've got all of these corporate people delivering neutered, love the word, neutered talks that are saying essentially the same thing using the same language, which is kind of what our Fanocracy book was in the beginning until we said, all right, you're a human and an individual and very different than me as a human individual. So let's put those two things out there. And I think it's a way better conference if the meeting planners of corporations can work with the corporate speakers and get them to like let it out there. Tell us
Yeah.
who you are. What do you love about what you do? Don't just tell us your talking points. People will be bored to tears.
Yeah, and my feeling on that is you're making the investment, you're bringing somebody in specifically for that. Don't neuter or don't
Yeah.
sandpaper down. I'll use your term, and kind of politically correctify who they
Yes.
are. Is it a risk? I don't think it's a huge risk, but I think it's what's going to distinguish meetings and meeting professionals. The work they might need to do, David, is stand firm and make the case and
Right.
embody and inhabit why we want that spark, that new voice, or that unique voice rather. We're not talking about coming out and a rebellion and
Right.
overthrow the king type of thing, but you know br-
No.
bringing in something that's provocative and isn't so right up the middle is where is the reason for bringing in a speaker to have their voice shine and put a spotlight on what they have to say in their own way. Of course, you, David, you inhabit the messaging, the initiatives, the mood, the culture, what's all happening, but still down the core is the essence is your take on things.
I think that's right. And yeah, of course, I'm going to talk to the meeting planner. Of course, I'm going to find out what the goals of the event are. Of course, I'm going to bring that in. But I think it's also important for the internal speakers. And that's where I see the biggest breakdown is when the
Yeah.
internal speakers, they bring the CEO, the CMO, maybe I don't know, the chief revenue officer, whoever the
I've heard,
right
I've,
people
I've
are.
seen the chief legal officer come out,
Yeah, and they all tell essentially using the same talking points, essentially the same story. I've seen great corporate meetings when they choose someone who's a great speaker and who has a fabulous message, like take somebody out of, say, the R&D department, who's like a mad scientist type, who is building the products, who's like tinkering away and who's, maybe the hair isn't combed
right.
perfectly and
It's
maybe
like
they.
Bill Nye, their version of Bill Nye the Science Guy or
Yeah,
something.
bring
Yeah.
that person on and
Yeah.
turn them on and don't give them any talking points. Let them, I mean, rehearse them, make sure that they've got a good talk. But, I want to hear from them. I don't want to hear from just the C-level people and have them deliver their public relations department approved messages.
I have a few more things I want to cover. Just we're gonna finish up on fandom
Yep.
and just get us to the heart of the matter. The
Hmm.
the role that AI is playing, not just in growing fandom, but in marketing. I'm sure your new edition is going to be weaving in some of that understanding. Share with us what, from your perspective, what's important and what we should know.
Yeah, 100%. You're absolutely right. The new ninth edition of the New Rules of Marketing and PR, brand new chapter on AI and AI throughout the whole thing. The last edition does have a lot about AI, but it was done pre-Chat GPT, so it was done pre what the essentially explosion in artificial intelligence
Right.
over the last couple of years. I think artificial intelligence is transforming all business, but certainly marketing in the same way that the internet and social media blew up marketing. It is utterly transformational. I think that that marketers who don't understand artificial intelligence probably won't have jobs in a while. Yes, artificial intelligence may remove some jobs, but those tend to be repetitive jobs. But for those people who understand artificial intelligence, how to use it to make marketing better, they will have immense opportunities in the coming years and decades. It's just going to be already is being transformational for marketing and for sales and for public relations and anything related to how you get your ideas and thoughts into the marketplace and how you understand customers and how to get them to understand what you're doing and hopefully become fans. I do think, however, that all of the old fashioned, if you will, things that worked pre AI are also super important, and in many cases, even more important. And I think, Seth, the work you're doing and the work that meeting planners around the world are doing, I think is even more important. And let me say why. Because with artificial intelligence, with something like the Sphere in Las Vegas, with the incredible technology, there's so much in our world now that's on our phones, it's in our computers that you can go to and see in an unbelievable experience like the Sphere was, that human element, the human approach becomes even more important. My prediction is that everyone in this listening or watching to this podcast right now, your jobs are going to become even more important with artificial intelligence because as more communications becomes artificially intelligentized, I don't know if that's a term, I just made it up. It means that the true human connection will become that much more important. Your in person conference will become way more important because of artificial intelligence. People will need that human connection. They will need, I talked about earlier, this idea of proximity to other humans, the idea that I can have a conversation over a glass of wine at the reception. I can have a conversation over a cup of coffee at the morning coffee break. I can hear a keynote speaker, maybe shake their hand at the end of the conference and share a few words. That is super powerful. That human touch, that human connection, that bringing people together, that building a tribe of fans becomes even more important in a world of AI. So I celebrate and thank everyone who's listening in and you, Seth, for doing the work that you're doing because this human connection is even more important in a world of AI.
David, you must be listening in on some of our previous podcasts. Recently, we had a gentleman who brought ChatGPT to market, a guy named Zach Cass, and we were having this same conversation. I called it the other AI, analog intelligence, where it's a shaking hand, it's looking you in the eye,
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
smirk, a knowing glare, both turning our head because something cool, some activation was happening, or the keynote was about to start. I don't know if the word is tremble, but it causes me to pause when I hear a lot of people use the word transformation. It might be overused, but I think it's understated because transformation is like replacing something from nothing. Like it's a new metaphor, it's a whole new realm. It's not changing the cabinets in your kitchen or painting your car. It's completely reconstituting, like at the cellular level, something and transforming it. I mean, even losing weight is a change. It can be transformative in your being, but it's not the end game. What I've heard, and I'd like to get your take on this, and I'm going to land the plane here. We're coming to the end in a bit, is often I'm hearing with AI and with virtual and hybrid events that if a keynote speaker is doing something that's what we'll call the 100 level or freshman level class, they shouldn't do it in person. There could be an
Hmm.
argument for that. There could be, there's validity and, definitely give weight to that. But like you said, getting in the audience like Magic Johnson does, and like our dear recently passed friend Bill Walton did, and like you do, and touching and connecting, there's something deeper about the message, the spark, the inspiration. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. When we were doing our research for Fanocracy, there's no doubt that our brains are wired that way. It goes back thousands of generations. I mean, back in the caves, I mean, it's a silly metaphor, but back in cave days, if you were with your tribe of people, 50 people around the campfire, you were safe and secure. The animals couldn't get you, and another tribe came. You've got your tribe there to help you. You go out in the woods by yourself, you feel nervous. It's still true today. It's hardwired in our brains. So the idea of what we do to bring people together into a physical room somewhere and have an event, a conversation, a series of conversations where people are physically together can literally build that tribe around the campfire feeling in people. And that you cannot replicate using artificial intelligence. Sure, I just shared an idea about mirror neurons, and there's elements of it, but the fundamental aspects of human beings coming together is hardwired in our species,
Yeah.
and it's important. And we can't lose track of that importance when we're working with the executives that we work with, the people who are helping us to ensure that these kind of events continue on, because people without it will feel like they're missing something. I bring it back to this idea of music, and I think I'm up to, I didn't do the calculations from this past weekend, but something like 970 live music concerts since I was 15 years old, 100 and what is it, 10 Grateful Dead concerts since I was 17 years old. And it's part of that is being together with other humans doing the same thing, dancing and laughing and cheering on our favorite musicians. That's not going away. In fact, I think
No.
it's even becoming bigger. Concert
Yeah.
tickets are selling more than they ever have. In a world of AI, in a world of virtual, more people are going to concerts than they ever have. The same thing needs to be true about our business, and it's up to us to make that happen.
And you mentioned the word campfire, and there was a term, campfires in cyberspace, but let's not forget that the campfire, the actual campfire, metaphorically speaking, is where the richness, where the stories were told on the cave wall, and there was a fire, and from Aristotle and the Socratic method, and in Rome, and on, and of course in written form, but how that connective tissue is so important. I want to take a hard turn here, David. Um, Another one of the books that is part of your life and your world, the Carbon Almanac. Um, Sustainability. It's more than a buzzword. It's something that's woven into the core virtues and essence of meetings, whether it's in large convention centers, out in nature reserves. This is something that is important to the producer of the event and the attendees. And it is being raised, the bar is being raised continually. I love this chapter on the marshlands because I live in the marsh. I live in South
Oh,
Carolina on the coast. I live on Daniel Island. And the importance of sustainability and meeting planners see that too. And again, I don't want to
yes.
make everything we talk about being tied back to meeting planners, but it's a whole, pardon the pun, a whole ecosystem of our planet and our activities. So, A, thank you for your involvement in being with this book. It's just a great resource. And what's up with you right now? I know you do work in Panama. Just share
Yeah.
a little bit of that.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's super important. The Carbon Almanac was a project that Seth Godin was the ringleader of. 300 of us got together. All none of us were paid, including Seth. The book was with Penguin Random House. We took all of the advance and all of the revenue from the book and plowed it back into buying free copies for schools and politicians and state legislatures and so on to raise this awareness of things that we can do around saving the planet and carbon problems going on. So it was a super great project to work on. Personally, I'm involved in an organization called the Mamoni Valley Preserve. It's in Panama. It's in the narrowest point between North and South America, between closest point between the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. Super important part of the world. We own 12,000 acres, preserving that for all time. And I'm heavily involved, donated money. I'm on the board and helping out. If we can save that little piece, it'll be very important for animals who use it as a migration corridor, for keeping more carbon sequestered. I mean, super, super important. And we all do our help. I think we can make this planet last. Unfortunately, many people aren't, but the more, if we can educate just one person at a time, I think that will help a lot. So I'm happy to be involved in a number of different ways because, like many keynote speakers, I have a big carbon footprint. I get on airplanes a lot. It's what I do. I If I have to go to Korea for a talk like I did a couple of months ago, I go to Korea for a talk. And that is using a lot of carbon in terms of my spot on that airplane. So with my involvement with the Carbon Almanac, I've more than offset my personal carbon footprint and my family's personal carbon footprint for the remainder of our lives. I've already done that. If we all do our part, we're going to be okay, I think.
Yeah, well, it was important work, and I wanted to make mention of it so that
Thank you.
people can not only be inspired but see the practicality, and there are ways to make a difference on an individual, for your family, for your
Yeah,
community, and beyond. David, we're
absolutely.
going to move into the final stretch here of the podcast with you. It's a little bit more lighthearted, a little more whimsical. It's going to be some rapid fire questions. Are you
Sure.
ready?
I'm
Okay.
ready.
What is one surprising fact about you that most people don't know?
I've swum from Alcatraz to San Francisco.
My mind is exploded. Dude, Deuteronomy. Holy,
I
how
don't know why.
cold?
I don't even know why I chose that one for that question, but
Because you probably have a bunch of them. I
there's other
know.
things I could have said. That's the
Yeah.
one that popped into
Give
my
us one
brain.
more.
I used to manage a cheese shop when I was in high school.
Oh, oh. So do you sheep's cheese, goat cheese, you name it,
It's
all
all
the
good. It's all
all
good. At one time, I could identify over 100 cheeses just by taking a bite. Not
wow.
anymore. At the time, I could.
Staying on the fromage
Uh,
theme, pizza, traditional cheese or with toppings?
New Haven style with cheese and then a little bit of pepperoni and onions, and I'm good to go.
And what makes it New Haven? It's thin, the crust, the
It's
sauce.
thin crust, high heat, very short cooking time in a brick oven, and
Oh,
usually coal-fired.
I love the
Not
specificity.
so great for the planet, the coal-fired thing, but for whatever reason, that seems to be a better pizza.
Favorite Grateful Dead song?
Whichever one I'm listening to right now is my favorite
Yeah,
favorite Grateful Dead song.
that would probably be the answer of your dear friend, Bill Walton, who,
Yeah,
recently.
our friend Bill. Bill wrote the
Yeah.
foreword to my book, Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead, and Bill and I have used the same speaker manager, and Seth, of course, know that. A fabulous guy, will be sorely missed.
I'd love to just, if you could, short a recent one that comes to mind, Bill anecdote.
So I was with my family over Easter. My two nephews are, I think, 6'7" and 6'5" right now. So I took a picture of them, texted them to Bill, and said, "My nephew 6'7", 6'5", thinking of you, Bill," or I don't know, something like that. Just
Yeah.
texted him randomly. I got the most beautiful text back, and
Mm,
I don't remember all of it, but it was poetic. And you know Bill, you know it.
yeah.
He loves to speak with sort of poetic ways. So his text, and I can't remember the exact words, but it ended with "shine on, heal on, live on,"
Mm,
and then he signed it BW, and I'm like,
yeah.
"Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
And I called up that text yesterday afternoon or evening, when I learned of Bill's death. As we're recording this, it happened just a couple days ago, and I'm looking at the text, and I just felt so sad and so happy at the same time. Sad because I recognize now he was saying goodbye to me in that text.
Mm,
He didn't say that, but
yeah.
he was saying goodbye to me in that text. It was the last text I received. It was only a couple months ago, and so I felt sad, but then I felt happy because it was a happy text, and all my memories of Bill are happy.
Yeah. What I'm left with is, even in his moment that he was going through, there was still that spirit of generosity shining through,
Yeah.
and giving, and in always being that poet and that artist that he was, that artist of
Yes.
life.
Yes.
I think that that's a good,
Artist of life.
yeah,
What a
art.
great term. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's a good moment to kind of leave us on, with Bill up there. He's somewhere either in space or jam, or
Yeah.
starting the second set of some show
Yeah.
somewhere. So
Absolutely right.
right there in the middle of it all. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for your insights. Thank you for just giving your all. Thank you for biting into a lemon. And for our listeners, thanks for coming back. Our new listeners, thanks for giving a shot. You'll be smarter for it. Subscribe, like, love, comment, and remember, like Bill, always be giving.